Hello all, this is Dr. Rakesh Kumar Manne and lecture for the day is Principles of Radiographic Interpretation. Radiographic interpretation is a step-by-step analysis of all the radiographic findings of the abnormality and to produce radiographic interpretation based on these findings. Before we start interpretation, what we need to do is all radiographs should be identified with patient's name, age, gender, registration number. So thus we don't mismatch these radiographs with other patients' radiographs. Then the next step is we need to choose appropriate diagnostic images. That is, we need to choose good quality diagnostic images. Images should have a good density and contrast. Density is degree of darkness and contrast is difference in densities. And we make sure the image is not distorted or elongated. The poor quality images with a distortion, elongation, poor density and the contrast may not be useful for diagnostic information. Then the next important step is make sure we have appropriate number and type of available images. That is, if there is a periapical cyst seen with cortical expansion clinically, as we know IOPA is a two-dimensional image, it shows only the mesodistal extension, not the buccolingual extension. Then we need to take an occlusal image also and keep it ready for the interpretation. Next, the last important step is viewing conditions. Always make sure the ambient light in the viewing room should be reduced. Light from the view box should be of equal intensity across the viewing surface. Once we choose an appropriate radiograph with a good quality image, then start with an image analysis. Image analysis is a 5-step process. The step 1 is to localize the abnormality, that is to identify the location of a pathology. Step 2, assess the periphery and shape of a pathology. Step 3, analyze the internal structures of a pathology. Step 4, analyze the effects of a lesion on surrounding structures. Step 5, to formulate a radiographic interpretation. So we are going to discuss each one of these steps in detail. Step 1, to localize an abnormality. In this, we need to see whether the lesion is localized or generalized, where the lesion is positioned exactly, then the lesion is single or multifocal, and size of a lesion. Localized or generalized. If a pathology appears all around the maxilla and the mandible, we call it as a generalized condition. All generalized conditions are usually metabolic or endocrine abnormalities. If abnormality is not generalized, if it's localized, it can be unilateral or bilateral. If a pathology is unilateral, that is of odontogenic origin. If a pathology is of bilateral, mostly that is a normal anatomical variant. Next, position of a lesion in the jaws. We need to identify whether the abnormality is in soft tissue or in bone. And the second thing, we should identify its point of origin. Commonly we call it as an epicenter. If a lesion or a pathology arising coronal to the tooth, that is usually of odontogenic epithelial origin. If a lesion is arising above inferior alveolar canal, and again that is of odontogenic origin, as shown within image 1. If a lesion is seen below the inferior alveolar nerve canal, then that is of non-odontogenic origin, as seen with an image 2. That could be something like a Staphne cyst of completely non-odontogenic origin. If epicenter is arising within inferior alveolar nerve canal, as seen with an image 3, that is understood the lesion is arising from the alveolar canal. That can be neural or vascular lesions, which is arising from inferior alveolar canal. Next, single or multifocal. If a lesion is single, all of us know that is usually of inflammatory or benign lesions. There are some multifocal lesions as seen with an image down there with an white and black arrows. That is a lesion arising at the multiple focal points. Most common examples are segmental dysplasia, OKCs, and multiple myelomas. Again, in localization of an abnormality, we should even consider the size of a lesion. The size, again, the smaller lesions usually of periapical granulomas, or the larger lesions can be of odontogenic cysts or tumors. Even larger lesions can be even in developmental lesions. But usually size doesn't play a major role, but that aids in differential diagnosis. Coming to step 2, we need to assess the periphery and shape of a pathology. What is periphery? Periphery is also called as a border or a boundary. Periphery is nothing but that's a junction between the normal bone and the pathology. The junction between the normal bone and the pathology, we call it as a periphery. Usually this periphery can be well-defined borders or it can be ill-defined borders. If it is well-defined borders, we have 3 types, as the image 1 shows. That is a corticated border. Corticated border is nothing but where we see thin, fairly uniform radio-opaque line of reactive bone at the periphery of a lesion. As seen with a black arrows, there is a thin radio-opaque line seen at the periphery. We call it as an corticated borders. The second border is sclerotic border. As seen with the second image, sclerosis is nothing but wide radio-opaque border of reactive bone, and this is usually not of a uniform width as seen within black arrows. The width is some areas there it is thin, some areas it is thick. This is most commonly seen with segmental dysplasias. Then the third border, well-defined border, is punched out borders. Usually we see sharp boundary of no reactive bone. Corticated and sclerotic, we see a white sclerotic borders around it, but in the punched out lesions where we don't see any opaque border, there is no reactive bone at all, that looks like a punching a radiograph with a paper puncher. As seen within black and white arrows, we see a small punched out appearance. All these 3 borders usually are well-defined borders. Then we have ill-defined borders. As the term indicates, ill-defined where we cannot define the border between the normal lesion and the pathology very clearly. Again, indefined borders, we have a blending borders. Blending borders as seen with an image 1 with a black arrow. There is a gradual transition between normal appearing bone trabeculae and abnormal appearing bone trabeculae of the lesion. Usually this is commonly seen within reactive lesions like osteomyelitis. Then the second ill-defined border is an invasive border. Invasive borders are commonly seen with a malignant lesions or a lesions which are very destructive. Usually we see an area of radiolucency above the borders as seen with a black arrow, where the borders is not clearly defined above the borders where we see there is an radiolucency. That is understood. The borders are relatively intact, but the lesion is penetrated above the borders. That shows aggressive nature of the lesion, commonly seen with malignant lesions. Then the third ill-defined border is permeative borders. These permeative borders, lesion grows around the existing trabeculae. We have a normal trabecular pattern, but these lesions grows around the trabecular pattern that results in enlargement of marrow spaces, as seen with the third image with a black arrow, where we see enlarged marrow spaces that is usually seen with reactive lesions or an inflammatory lesions. Rarely even the malignant lesions also shows a permeative margins. Then shape as the images clearly shows, the first image circular or fluid shape, that is usually seen with cystic lesions where the fluid is seen within the lesions, that gives a circular or a fluid shape. Then the second shape is a scalloped, as seen with the second image down, where we see the scalloping all around the margins. Here we need to clearly understand the difference between periphery or borders and shape. Border is a junction between the normal and the pathology, is only a small area of a shape, whereas a shape is in such the whole complete pathology we consider it as a shape.